have a few opening remarks, and we'll turn it over to question and answer.
Well, first of all, I'd like to thank the College Football Playoff and all the people who've worked hard to give our team, our players, as well as Ohio State's players who had a great year, the opportunity to play, in a college football playoff national championship game. I know this has been a little bit of a trying year for a lot of folks, but you all have done a great job to give the players an opportunity to compete in a game like this, something that, will be a keepsake for them for the rest of their lives. We're excited about having the opportunity to play against a great Ohio State team. These guys are very well coached. Ryan Day's done a great job there. They're one of the best defensive teams in the country in terms of points allowed, tough to run against, really explosive on offense, really good skilled players outside. They do a great job of running the ball and controlling the line of scrimmage on both sides of the ball. So very challenging game for us all the way around, but these are the kind of games, if you're a competitor, you really look forward to playing in, and this is a great opportunity for our players to compete against a great team.
Thank you, Coach. We'll now turn it over to question and answer. Please use the raise hand function if you have an interest in asking Coach a question. Today's first question will come from Pat Ford at Sports Illustrated.
Nick, I know winning is always the objective, but is there any more satisfaction or less satisfaction from winning a defensive battle versus a shootout? Is one style of play any more satisfying than the other?
No, I don't think so. I think you have to do what you have to do to execute, play well in the game, give yourself an opportunity to win. Every game can, have an ebb and flow that may end up being a little bit different, and you just got to keep playing the next play and hope that you can do the things to finish the game so you give yourself an opportunity to be successful and have a chance to win.
Thank you. Next up is Nathan Baird.
Hi, Nick. Just curious if you could expound more on your thoughts on Ohio State's defense and maybe especially what you saw them do against Clemson in the Sugar Bowl that impressed you.
Well, they were very impressive on the line of scrimmage. Clemson had a tough time running the ball. They've got a great back and a lot of quarterback runs that they did a really good job against. But, they were physical up front. They did a good job of pressing the pocket. I think they played outstanding. Their secondary played, well enough, made the plays they needed to make in the game. They've got a lot of good athletes on defense. They're physical, they're athletic, they can run. They play well together, so this is a very talented group.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from Patrick Murphy.
Thank you. Nick, similar question, but on Ohio State's offense, Trey Sermon's a guy who's emerged recently after transferring from Oklahoma. What have you guys seen from him, and how much do you look at these last two games as compared to the rest of his career since he's had games late?
Well, he's playing outstanding football right now. There's no doubt about that. He had a fantastic game against Clemson. I think they have two really good running backs. Both are very capable. So their offensive line does a really good job of blocking your looks up front, getting a hat on a hat, and the runners are very talented. So the combination of the explosive ability that they have in the passing game, the good receivers that they have outside, the speed that they have, the way they can stretch the field with the playmakers they have. The quarterback can run or pass and can make all the throws. So, there's just a good all-around team, and they have great balance, and I think that's what makes them very difficult to defend.
Next up, we'll hear from Ralph Russo.
Hi, Nick. Thanks for doing this. You've been asked a lot about your receivers, and Devontae's having an amazing year. Aside from just you're throwing the ball more, and teams in college football are throwing the ball more, the emphasis on that position seems to have grown over in recent years. Why?
Well, I think that anytime you have guys playing any skilled position and they have ability to make explosive plays, you want to try to take advantage of that the best you can. And I think sort of the advent of the spread offense, more spread formations, four open kind of formations, spreads the field, which gives players on the perimeter a much better chance to make plays. And you have to tackle well in space. You got to get these guys on the ground, even if they catch short passes and turn them into long runs. And their ability to, throw the ball down the field. And I think, the passing game in college football is probably what has sort of evolved in a very positive way for most people. RPOs probably contribute to that to some degree, but really good play action passes that go along with the running game that most teams have, like Ohio State has great play action pass game, which they hit a lot of explosive plays on. I think having those kind of skill guys that can score points or something that you certainly want to try to feature, and I see more and more teams trying to do that.
Next up, we'll hear from Dennis Dodd. Dennis?
Hey, Nick, thanks for doing this. You've had such great success with juniors, advising them whether to stay or go. I wonder what that conversation was like with Najee, and obviously it's paid off this year with the kind of season he's had.
Well, I think what we try to do is be realistic with the players in terms of helping them make a good business decision for them and their family. It's ultimately their decision, and I think that we try to make them aware of how the money sort of goes down in the draft, and do you have a chance to improve your value if you stay and play college football? There's no developmental league in football, different than baseball has minor leagues, hockey has a minor league. NBA has a D League or whatever it is, where they can develop players. But football is kind of all or nothing when you sign up for the NFL, and so the one place that you can continue to develop and create value for yourself is to stay in school. If your draft grade is not what you think it could be, then you have a chance to enhance your value, and when you enhance your value and the guaranteed money that you get, it also creates security for you and is really the best way to, help your family.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from Bill Rabinowitz.
Hi, Nick. Obviously, your offense is elite, and I know your defense has had a couple games when it gave up a lot of points. How do you view the way your defense has played? And as a defensive coach in an era of exploding offenses, how do you kind of assess, how does that make you assess or reassess how well a defense is playing?
Well, I think that, consistency and performance is really, at the end of the day, what determines, how well you're playing. And we have played well in some games, this year. Other games, not as good as we'd like. And as coaches, we need to do a better job of putting our players in a better position so they have a chance to be successful. We've played I think we played 4 top 10 teams this year and some very explosive offensive teams, and been very challenged with 4 out of 5 new starters in the secondary. And those guys have improved dramatically. And I think we need to continue as a team on defense to focus on things that we can improve on so that we can play with a little more consistency game in and game out.
Thank you, Coach. Next, we'll hear from Kirk Bowles. Kirk?
Yeah, Nick, is there anything about Steve Sarkisian that separates him from other offensive coordinators that you've had? And since you'll be playing him in a couple of years at Texas, why can't any of your former assistants beat you in a game?
Well, I think that's probably only a matter of time. We've had a lot of great coaches here, and they've done a great job for us, and we're always happy to see them, get opportunities. That's what I think they work hard for. When you're an assistant, whether you're an assistant to be a coordinator or a coordinator to become a head coach. And, Sark has done a marvelous job here. He's very well organized. He works well with all the people in the organization, players and coaches alike. He's a good play caller on game day. He does a really good job of preparing the players game plan wise for, each and every game. And he's just done a great job, and he's been a real asset to our organization. And, I think he'll be very successful as a head coach. So, and he's taken over a good program. So it's going to be challenging for anybody that plays them in the future, I think.
Thank you. Next, we'll hear from Charlie Potter. Charlie?
Hey, Coach, I just want to ask you about the Heisman Trophy ceremony tomorrow. You've obviously attended several of these in person, but this one's virtual. Just what are your plans to watch it, and how happy are you for guys like Mack and Smitty to be named finalists?
Well, I'm really happy for our players, all players that have a chance to be recognized. You know, it's always great, and you always love it when your players get recognition. But, you know, there's a lot of players on our team that have done a great job all year that are not going to receive recognition. And I think that's a lesson in life, because sometimes you do great things in life and you don't get recognized for it, but you have to kind of satisfy yourself in knowing that you did your best to be the best you could be. And I certainly feel like the guys that are up for awards and have an opportunity, hopefully, to win some of these awards have done just that. And hopefully they'll get rewarded for it. You know, internally, we kind of keep our plans, you know, to ourselves in terms of what we're going to do. And I'm going to talk to the players about it today.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from Michael Casagranada.
Just Nick, what you guys learned from that 2018 title game with the coaching distractions surrounding departures, and how do you think that will help this week with Steve Sarkisian?
Well, you know, I think we've had several of these situations where we've had guys playing in the national championship game and guys are getting head coaching jobs someplace else. And I think it's up to each individual. You know, I went through it when I became the head coach at Michigan State, and I was the defensive coordinator of the Cleveland Browns with Bill Belichick, and we had like 5 or 6 games left to play in the season and had a chance to get in the playoffs, which we did, and went 2 deep in the playoffs, won the first game, lost the second. But I think you just have to, you know, separate yourself and focus on, you know, look, if it wasn't for the players, if it wasn't for the players at the Cleveland Browns being the best defense, I probably would have never got the Michigan State job. So you kind of owe it to the players to give your best, to do your best to help them get prepared for the game so that they can play well in the game. That's how I always felt. I think that's how Sark feels. And, you know, most of the guys in the past have been able to do that and been effective. And it's not been a distraction for us. And, you know, we're going to try to help manage it every way that we can so that it's not a distraction for us this year.
Thank you. Next up, we'll hear from Dan Hope.
Hey, Nick, wanted to ask you about Ryan Day. How well do you know him, and kind of what do you see in him as an offensive play caller?
Well, I don't know Ryan well. I've met him before. I think he's an outstanding coach. I think they do a fantastic job, you know, with their team, the way their team competes, the way their team plays, the discipline, the togetherness that they have, the way they execute. And offensively, you know, does a good job of, you know, trying to manage and control the tempo of the game on offense. And they do a really good job of executing, which is all about, you know, coaching your players to know what to do, how to do it, why it's important to do it that way. And they do it extremely well, and they present lots of problems with the system and the scheme that they run, but they do a good job of executing it, which is really probably the most important thing, you know, you like to see, you know, as a coach. And, you know, Ryan's certainly done that there at Ohio State, really with his entire team. But, you know, I know he's probably a little bit more involved with the offense, and they do an outstanding job.
And our final question today for Coach comes from Lane Higgins. Lane?
Hey, Coach. Thanks so much for taking this. I wanted to ask a little bit about one of the things you mentioned earlier with kind of this passing revolution that's happened in college football. And it seems like a lot of that began, at least for your program, the last time that you played Ohio State in the championship game in 2014. And I'm curious, you know, how much do you think that game was maybe a watershed in how Alabama approached, you know, offensive play calling and structure, and also maybe, you know, as Alabama goes, so does college football?
Well, that was a great game. I think the score was like 42-35. They had a great team. We had a very good team, and As it turned out, they won pretty handily in the national championship game, so which indicates, what a great team they had. So I don't know that any of our players on our team were around, back then. So I don't know how that affects this game. I think this game is all about how do you prepare for this game. What do you do today and every day leading up to this game to prepare yourself to play the best that you're going to play, assuming that the guy you're going to play against may be the best guy you played against all year. So I think that's got to be more the focus, and I don't know that the history of that game has a whole lot of impact on how we think or what we do or how our players think in terms of what they need to do.
Thank you for your time today, Coach.
All right, thank
everyone,
you. Appreciate it.
Just